Roger, code 639 wall.
Salte el vehículo, eh? Good! Get the fuck out the car. You good, partner? I'm good.
It kicks off with a hot pursuit in LA's Newton division. Brian and Mike chase down a truck, the whole thing caught on tape. Cornered suspects open fire, shattering their windshield, but the cops push forward, return shots, and drop both men before cuffing them as backup arrives. Back in the locker room, the camera is still rolling.
This is where the forces of good prepare to fight the forces of evil,
Brian says, dragging a shirtless Mike into frame. Mike pulls away until Brian adds, "We work basic patrol here at Newton." One of the toughest divisions in the LAPD, Mike smirks. "Shoot in Newton, that's right. Lucky 13. Brian flashes their gear, Spyderco knife, spare mags, while Officer Van barges into the shot, unimpressed. He threatens to report them for filming, but the teasing only cuts the video short. From there, Brian and Mike switch to body cams, pointing them at each other. At the next briefing, the captain levels with them. DA cleared you on last month's shooting. Turned out to be a good shooting. Brian and Mike have been cleared on their last patrol. He reminds them he's been in their shoes and that pulling the trigger on duty is still homicide, but if you do the right thing, I will always have your back. Do the wrong thing and cross me, I will personally throw you under the bus. The Sarge takes over and insists Brian and Mike have to start using tickets to work, else they risk getting separated. Then he assigns them to Area 13, where they had previously been working on Area 9. Out in the parking lot, Orozco says, "Listen, you know they can subpoena that stuff if something goes sideways, right?" Brian replies, 2 words, erase button. Orozco asks Brian why he's been recording all their activities, and Brian answers that it's for his pre-law class. After getting a mouthful from Orozco about everything they're possibly doing wrong, the pair get into the new patrol car, marked with a large 13. Soon, they're back on the road, driving slowly, camera rolling, eyes peeled for trouble. Mike says, "Dude, it's good to be back, man." In the car, he mentions he's relieved to be back on duty. During their administrative leave, he was home with his wife, and also had to deal with her brother, who he personally doesn't like, in his pool every day. The radio crackles to life with a report, and it's go time.
First customer of the day.
I hope they enjoy police service.
Mike adds, there's a disturbance involving a male at 9742 Maple Street, and they are to respond quickly. The cops end up in a residence where the suspect is violent with words, no care for his life or the authority in front of him. This whole dispute started with mail. The resident was aggressive with the mailman, and Brian's suspect's intoxication led to this behavior. They fail to calm him down, and Trey starts yelling racial slurs at Mike, making the officer down for a fistfight. Trey agrees. "If you whoop my ass, I'll put them handcuffs on myself." He takes off his shirt while Mike takes off his belt holder. The fight ensues, Mike ramming him into a drawer by the window. Brian is just a spectator, making commentaries at the camera while the two make a mess. At some point, Trey is standing while Mike is on the floor receiving a kick. Trey says, "You like that?" This ain't no wrestling match. With Trey's demand to stand up and Brian's encouragement, Mike gets back to his feet and lands a punch on the guy's jaw before pushing him into a wall where he delivers several punches into Trey's gut until the man slumps in defeat.
Give me dogs.
Brian tosses him the cuffs and he dangles them like a winning prize before dropping them down in a dramatic flare. Later that night, the Locos gang are on the move, masking their faces and checking their weapons like they're heading into a mission. Meanwhile, Trey is with his squad, setting the record straight before the streets make him look weak. He says, he kept it gangster. We straight up squabbled. He explains the fight with Mike was off the books. The officer took off his badge, set aside his gun, and it was just fists. He lost and got arrested, but Mike didn't press charges for assaulting a police officer. With his record, that alone could have sent him away for life. Trey tells them,
"Let me tell you something. Win, lose, or draw. As long as you squabble and get down, that's gangster. You understand what I'm saying?"
Some guy still gives him grief for getting beaten, but Trey stands firm that he's got nothing but respect for the cop. Still, someone points out that Trey's respect doesn't change the fact that Mexican cops keep harassing black people. Trey says, "Back in the day, all these neighborhoods used to be black, and what are they now?" Even he has to admit Mexicans are moving in fast and taking over their neighborhood. The Locos roll past in a drive-by, spraying rounds that send the blood scrambling. As they speed off, they shout, "The block is theirs." It's a rite of passage for their new recruit, but on the other hand, one blood is hit. They got CK, he's down, bleeding out, while the crew panics and some already plot revenge. This is what we believe to be the Code 37 vehicle used in the drive-by last night, Brian says, examining the torched car. Brian and Mike tape off the abandoned vehicle from the drive-by. The car's been torched, but it still reeks of evidence. 2 different kinds of shell casings even though detectives had reported 3. The 2 gangs are fighting for turf for narcotic sales. Homicide shows up and they're not thrilled with the camera rolling. The big dogs are here now, so set up some yellow tape and stay on the other side of it, one detective says. Once they confirm Brian and Mike didn't mess up the scene, the patrolmen are told to stretch yellow tape and stand by. 2 hours drag on, with detectives still combing through. Eventually, Officer Van pulls up to relieve them, sending the pair back to patrol in case gang members try to stir trouble. Van's partner Orozco falls in line, but Brian and Mike push back with their usual goofy attitude. He says, "You know I see you guys out here. You're being good little company men, aren't you? Are you doing the Lord's work? And you're making a difference, as you call it. It's all fun, and games to you. You get to run and jump and fight and shoot." He basically tells them it's all perfect until the department screws them over and discards them after. The pair remain goofy rather than solemn as they return to their car. Back in the car, Mike mentions wanting to hook Brian up with a girl when the radio crackles with a report of a missing juvenile. When they arrive at the house, a frantic mother says, "My babies are gone." The frantic mother insists her toddlers are missing, while Brian questions her. Mike spots a man on the couch, detains him after brief resistance, and hears the kids are with their grandmother. Ignoring protests, Brian searches the house. When the man lashes out, Brian pins him down as Mike restrains the mother. Mike asks,
Brian, what's up?
and Brian says,
I found the kids.
they find the toddlers taped up in a cluttered closet. That night, Brian is shaken, working out until exhaustion. Later on patrol, he texts a girl he's been seeing, telling Mike he feels a real connection. Mike isn't convinced, and their talk shifts to his own marriage, 8 years in, straight out of high school, though Brian doubts the chemistry, noting how little the couple even talk. Where Mike values a wife who's a mother and a help, Brian wants more. "I want somebody to talk to, not just sleep with. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Mike admits Brian might not find someone as smart as him. About his wife Gabby, Mike insists she's real smart. Brian agrees that's all he wants, a smart girl, and Mike teases, "I know you want a chick like my girl, but I'll kill you if you touch her." Brian screams in frustrated response. Mike presses for the girl's name, and when Brian won't say, he grabs his phone. Since Brian already checked her out, Mike invites him to bring her to his sister's quinceañera. Later, they answer a noise complaint at a house party where curbside locos stash drugs and weapons before the cops walk in. Music blares, smoke hangs heavy, and while Orozco trades words with Law, Brian locks eyes with Big Evil.
"Cause my evil's big."
Big Evil says when Brian asks about the nickname. They lock into a tense stare down before Brian finally tells them to keep the noise down. On the day of the quinceañera, Brian arrives with Janet as his date. At the cops' table, everyone mingles, while Gabby, heavily pregnant, draws Janet's curiosity. The 2 women slip into deeper conversation as the men watch. Later that night, Brian and Janet share an intimate moment back at his apartment. By morning, Brian is still asleep while Janet wanders with his camera, recording herself. She says,
"I did go through your wallet. I'm sorry. I am naturally curious."
Gotta love a guy who has a picture of his mom in his wallet. In the video, she fiddles with his pistol, flips through his wallet, and lights up when she sees he keeps a photo of his mom. She also finds a list of women's names and dismisses it with confidence, saying that's all in the past now. She kisses the camera lens before slipping back into bed, curling into his arms to receive a gentle kiss from him. Brian and Mike are staking out the curbside set when Sarge rolls by. He brings up that Van wants to file a complaint against Brian for all the constant filming. "Taylor, I gotta put in my log that I verbally counseled you about this camera." Sarge says he's already warned Brian, but Brian brushes it off as his documentary, while Mike snaps that Van is just bitter. Sarge shakes his head, but eventually lets them off with nothing more. They settle back into the stakeout until a truck pulls up. Big Evil's mom comes out to receive a package, and Brian quickly runs the plates, only to find they come back clean. Itching for a fault to go after the guy, Mike cites that stupid CD hanging from his rearview mirror, obstructing his vision. "Let's do this," Brian replies. They tail the truck until it finally pulls over. Mike approaches the driver and explains why they stopped him. When he asks the man to step out, the driver suddenly draws a gun, but Mike reacts fast, redirecting the shot and wrestling the weapon out of his hand. Brian is already on the other side with his gun drawn, holding him steady so Mike can take him down and cuff him. Sirens wail as backup arrives, Orozco and her partner. They search the vehicle and uncover what looks like a pot of soup, but inside is a stash of cash. They also find a set of ornate firearms tucked away. Back at the station, Brian and Mike are buried in paperwork while the captain oversees the process. Sarge says, "Keep up the good work, guys. I really appreciate it." Carry on. He looks over the confiscated weapons and cash with a sharp eye before turning to leave. Mike notices Brian stiffening up whenever the captain is around, and Brian doesn't even bother denying it. Then he casually drops that he's got a date lined up with Janet and heads off, spending the day with her and telling her straight out, "You're the best." On their next night patrol, both men are running on fumes. Brian pushes for more coffee, but Mike shakes his head, saying he's already buzzing off too many energy drinks. Then Brian spots flames and radios it in, Mike steering them toward the scene. A panicked mother rushes from the burning house, crying that her children are still inside. Without hesitation, the two charge in and manage to pull 2 kids to safety. But outside, the woman says, "My girl." She's 2. She sobs that one more kid is still trapped upstairs. Before Brian can hold him back, Mike dives right back into the blaze. Brian follows, and this time the fire has grown fiercer, smoke filling their lungs and slowing their movements. Crawling low, they find the toddler, but the way out is brutal, every breath a struggle, every second longer than it should be. They stagger out alive, the child in hand, though both are scorched and wheezing. Paramedics rush in to treat them, but the cops push them off, more concerned with each other than themselves. Mike pulls Brian close, steadying him as he coughs, reassuring him after he clearly took the harder hit. For their selfless actions and their exemplary service to the citizens of this city, the Medal of Valor is presented to Officer Brian Taylor and Officer Mike Zavala. The brave cops are met with applause and standing ovations from their colleagues. Proud faces swarm through, and then they're on stage collecting their awards and shaking hands with the brass.
You feel like a hero?
Huh?
You feel like a hero?
No.
Man, me neither.
Brian and Mike are at a convenience store when Brian starts that chain of thoughts. Neither of them can pin down what being a hero is supposed to feel like. Mike admits Gabby lit into him after the fire, scared out of her mind that he might have died and never met his own kid. Brian nods, saying Janet shared similar sentiments, and admits the only reason he went back in was because Mike did first. But Mike can see there's more on his partner's mind. He presses, and Brian finally brings up the driver they pulled over, the guy with the ornate guns. Brian's been digging on his own, and he's convinced there's something bigger at play. Mike warns him he's not a detective, but Brian argues the units who should be handling it aren't moving on it.
I said you're not a detective.
I want to be a detective.
Brian fires back coolly. It doesn't take much more. Mike caves, and the two head out to check things themselves. At the house, they scan the perimeter before Brian calls in for 2 additional units. Mike pounds on the front door, and the resident answers, still busy on the phone. The cops push inside and find a strange shrine. Pulling back the curtains, they uncover a room packed with trafficked victims. Federal agents. Who's in charge here? Are you in charge? The agents swarm in from nowhere, catching the patrols off guard. The guy asking questions just keeps throwing more questions, saying the patrols have just made them lose a POI. Mike is ready to leave, but Brian wants to understand what's going on, so he meets the guy with the answers. He's told, "Watch out for these guys. They operate by a different set of rules." "I know I'm just a ghetto street cop, but you've got to give me something here," Brian replies. "We've got indicators he's a runner for the Sinaloa cartel." The agent is talking about the cowboy the patrols just help apprehend. Brian already ran him clean, and now the Fed throws them a bone. They're on cartel turf, and they can't operate as they like, else there will be trouble. They've done their part, and now they're expected to leave. No questions asked. Back in the car, Mike and Brian quarrel a bit about what just happened. "We didn't even have a call there," Mike complains. He's of the opinion they had no business uncovering something that dark. Brian yells in response that he didn't think it would get that deep. The rest of the ride is quiet. Gabby's baby is here, and Brian and Janet come visiting. "Did you name him Brian?" Brian whispers, but it's a negative as the child is a daddy's junior. Back in their patrol car, one again on a nightly shift, Brian and Mike discuss affairs of the heart, knowing the right one, marriage is forever, and taking time to think it through before Brian goes popping the question to Janet. Then a frantic report comes in from a rookie cop who's so panicked she can't give clear details. What they find is Van with a knife through one eye. The injured cop gives them a description of his attacker and what direction he headed. They find a Hispanic male beating up Van's partner in a dark alley. When Brian yells for him to get off her or eat a bullet, the guy raises his hand and says, "I'm done. I ain't resisting, officer." His back is turned to Brian. The cop doesn't care for his politeness and barks out orders that the guy follows. Mike cuffs him and Brian calls for backup. The guy was this close to beating the woman to death. Later on, the patrols learn from Sarge that Van and Sook won't be returning to the division after what just went down. The division is falling apart, but they still need to suck it up and resume the night shift. At Janet and Brian's wedding reception, Mike gives his best man speech. He starts, "Janet, you've got a lot of heart hooking up with a cop. Because it takes a strong person, and I see like a lot of cops' wives in here, they're all nodding their heads. You've got to take care of her, bro." He goes on to say they're all family now and gets the crowd to giggle towards the end of the speech, ending it with a toast. The reception is full with a lot of advice. Sarge to a bunch of young soldiers, Gabby to Janet, specifics about how to make her intimacy with Brian interesting, and later on, Mike to Brian. Mike says, "If anything happened to you, I would take care of your kids. If you had any, and I would take care of her." He promises his pal he's basically got his back, no matter what. Janet is good in books, and he just wants Brian not to mess it up. Brian can only smile in response. "What's in the stack? Anything good?" Mike asks. It's a morning shift, and Brian goes through the list of reports. They all seem boring until one. A wellness on an elderly woman. They go knocking on Mrs. Williams' door, but no one answers, so Mike goes to check the back while Brian details what's happening to his cam recording. Mike reports nothing, and Brian explains to his camera audience that they're in their rights to boot the door because the daughter of the elderly gave them permission for a welfare check. Brian says Officer Zavala specializes in booting doors. Mike confirms this proudly, ready to boot that door when Brian points out that responsible cops check the doors aren't unlocked first. In this case, the door is bolted, so Mike kicks it in. Immediately, a strong whiff of death hits them. They find a corpse in an airtight bag in the closet and radio and assistance. They also find large amounts of drugs in a steaming kettle. This draws their attention to a separate room where they find dismembered corpses and a message from the cartel. A police official familiar with the investigation denied rumors Mexican drug cartels are responsible for the murders. Behind the reporter are several cops and a long line of tapes. The channel calls it the biggest narcotic seizure of the year. Later on, ICU eavesdrops on a cartel call that orders the patrol cops assassinated for meddling. Brian and Mike run into Trey, and based on the respect he's still got for the last incident, he tells them,
Word is, you got a hit on y'all, man. Y'all been greenlit.
Yeah, come on, man. We're cops. Everybody wants to kill us, Trey.
Brian feels it's nothing to worry about, but Trey just thought to tell it how it is. Wait till they hit a small street. While Brian and Mike are having their usual friendly bicker, unaware that Locos Gang are tailing them, Big Evil and the others plot when best to get them as they've been tasked with carrying out the assassination. It sparks a big disagreement between the gang members. Big Evil's just screaming and threatening everyone who tries to pitch in, but La won't be intimidated. She tells him they've got to plan this through or rush screwing up big time. He finally agrees that they should retreat for the time being. Janet's pregnant, Brian reveals to Mike on their next shift, and Mike is genuinely excited for his pal. Meanwhile, Big Evil tells his crew that if they pull off this mission, they'll get a trip to Vegas while the heat in the hood dies down. A reckless driver lures Brian and Mike into a chase. When the car brakes hard, they slam into its rear. The suspect bolts, sprinting upstairs into a building, and the cops give chase. Inside, machine guns open up the moment they step into a wide hall. Bullets rain from above, no cover in sight, and the only chance they have is to sprint across and dive into a hallway. Tell her to get down. Inside one of the rooms, they find a woman clutching her baby, shouting in Spanish and refusing to calm down. Brian's walkie got clipped, and his phone has no signal. The woman points to hers, and Mike grabs it to call dispatch. But the mother's cries, paired with the baby's wails, echo through the building, giving away their position. The gang zeroes in and opens fire toward the room. The cops are forced to take cover. "We're shooting our way out of here, bro," Brian says. The gang are currently loading when Brian lays on the plan to him. They empty their mags and move in the opposite direction, killing one guy around the corner. They find another guy in a car and kill him too. They push ahead, high on alert. They see headlight, Mike hoping it's PD, but it's not. The gang member fires and Taylor is hit before Mike takes him down. It's bad. It's bad. But do you know what? I've seen guys way worse make it, Mike says. He assesses Brian's chest injury and needs to give his partner hope. He applies pressure to the wound, but time is running out and help doesn't come, no matter how much Mike screams for it. Checkmate, puto. The gang have Mike cornered, and before he can react, they perforate him. Before they can celebrate, backup comes and guns them down when they refuse to surrender. During the funeral, it is revealed Brian survived, but Mike didn't. He comes out to give an eulogy, but can only manage,
He was my brother.
In a flashback to the day of the shooting, Zavala shares a funny story with Taylor about the first time he and his wife were together, just before a call comes in from dispatch. It's a wrap for this one. Keep watching for more. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.